I'm speaking today with Mohamedou Ould Slahi, born December 21st, 1970, who spent 14 years in Guantanamo Bay without being charged, arriving August 4th, 2002, released October 17th, 2016. He wrote a memoir in 2015 while still imprisoned. The U.S. government declassified it in 2012 with numerous redactions. It was the first work by a still imprisoned Guantanamo detainee. Published in 2015, it became an international bestseller. It details Slahi's experience of being force-fed seawater, sexually molested, subjected to a mock execution, repeatedly beaten, kicked and smashed across the face, and all spiced with threats that his mother would be brought to Guantanamo and gang-raped. Prison officials prevented Slahi from receiving a copy of his published book. The Mauritanian, a film adaptation of the memoir, was released on February 12th this year, directed by Kevin MacDonald and starring Jodie Foster, Tahar Rahim, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Shailene Woodley. He's been living in Mauritania since his release. He reattained his passport last year and has been attempting to gain permission to travel, not least to Germany, to see his son.
Thank you so much for inviting me today in your program. And I feel truly honored to talk to you and to your audience. My name is Mohamedou Ould. I come from Mauritania. I was born in the south. My father was a camel herder. I don't know any father of mine who wasn't a camel herder of sort. And my dream was to grow to be a camel herder just like my father. But this dream was cut short because of the successive drought that hit the country in the 70s and the 80s. So all our camels died, and we had only very few that couldn't sustain the life of a big family. So we are 12 siblings from the same father and the same mother. So my mother decided single-handedly to move the family against the will of my father near the city for the children to find jobs and just to make a livelihood, because my father was hanging on a dream that would never materialize. So he was living in this fantasy that he could recuperate, but that's
how many camels did your father have? And you were living in a rural area at that point, obviously.
Yes. So I heard, so when the thing I remember, it's like a dozen, a little bit over a dozen. And then they became fewer and fewer. So when my father died, when I was 11, we had only like several, maybe 3, 4. And
how did you survive? I mean, how is it possible for a family of that size to survive with that limited supply of livestock? What else was the family doing in order to keep everything together?
So my mother decided that the kids need to abandon this lifestyle and find jobs in the cities. So my oldest brother went to Senegal, across the border. We were just at the border, southern border to Senegal. And I was 7 at that time. This was 78. And then the other kids found a job at bakeries and just to make ends meet. So we have the same plate, so we all contribute. They couldn't find a job for me because I was very weak and very small. And then the second best thing, they sent me to school. And it was by accident, and I didn't have a birth certificate. So we went to the school. The principal said, he doesn't have a birth certificate, but I accept him. And I want you to give me birth certificate. That's why you see my birth certificate has different like birth dates, sometimes no birth date, sometimes 31st, sometimes 21st, sometimes 1/1. So anyway, and then I fell in love with school because I just loved it. And I remember this very hot day. very hot. When we say hot in Mauritania, it's really hot. And the school was, I just went the other day and I measured the distance. It was about 2 kilometers. That is over 1 mile. And I used to walk this distance back and forth twice a day because we have the morning class from 8 to 12 and the afternoon class from 3 to 5. So meaning I walk every day at least 8 kilometers, about 6 miles every day. And I didn't have shoes. And I remember running, and then my feet burned like beyond description. Then I would go to structures and the few trees to cool them down. And then on my way, our neighbor, which was like doing well, she stopped me and started scolding me, telling me, why didn't you wear your shoes? And then started telling me, this is really bad and you should always wear your shoes. And I was burning. She was talking to me and I was burning. And I was too ashamed, Jordan, to tell her that I didn't have money to buy shoes. My family was so poor. We just came from the countryside, and she just kept scolding me. So I agreed to go back to my home and then pretend that I wear shoes, but instead I took another route where I avoided this woman. That's how we did. It's like I rarely ate meat because I didn't have money. And so, but I did well in school, even though like my family never asked me how I did. They didn't even understand the concept of passing from one class to the next.
Were you the only sibling who went to school?
Yeah, yes, me and the older one. So,
and what kind of education? What kind of education did your parents have?
Aside from Bedouin education, none. So Bedouin education, where you learn how to read, to write, or like homeschooling, which is automatic. When I went to school, I knew how to read and write because we were like a book tribe, a tribe that, because you have in Mauritania like the tribes that carry weapons and the tribe that carry the books. So we carried the books.
And what's the distinction between those two? What's the distinction between those tribes? I mean, obviously books and weapons, but I've never heard that distinction drawn before. So what does that mean exactly?
So it means it's like kind of a caste systems that disappeared, but I saw it in my lifetime. So some tribes carry weapons and like build this emirate, like they collect taxes and they provide security and they like protect the borders. And some tribes, they don't carry weapons, they just carry the books, and then they take this religious leadership where they like organize religious ceremony like marriage, like divorce, like jurisprudence, like kind of unofficial judiciary.
I see, and so there's no separation between those functions in some sense, and having the books. And what books? What are the characteristic books?
Yes, so what we learn is mostly like the grammar, Arabic grammar, and Greek philosophy, and religion, Quran, and the tradition, what we call hadith. And that's it. That's the extent of it. No languages, etc., etc.
And what's the Greek philosophy? And you said that was taught at home.
Yes, all of it.
And so what did you learn about Greek philosophy? It seems like a rather strange intermingling. So how does that come about, the mixture of Greek philosophy and education according to the Quran, let's say?
Well, Jordan, so I didn't advance in this homeschooling to get to Greek philosophy because you have to be old enough. So the Islamic jurisprudence is based on what they call usul, and usul is derived from Greek philosophy. So the whole jurisprudence is derived from the logic of the Greeks. And we have always this discussion that in order to modernize our jurisprudence, Islamic jurisprudence, we have to learn Leibniz, and we have to learn about Einstein, we have to learn Descartes, because the Greek philosophy on which this whole Islamic jurisprudence is built is outdated, obviously. And so
back to your schooling. So you came into the city, you couldn't find a job specifically, so you were sent off to school. What kind of school was that? What did you learn there? And was it like a standard classroom, a standard Western classroom? How was it organized, and what did you learn?
So it was a French school system that the government inherited from the French colonial time, and it was just different than the school system I'm used to at home, because at home I can learn at my own pace, and there are no tests. You just learn what you want, and then for as long as you want, which was much more advanced and much more better for me. But the school system, it was so much, the French school system, so much pressure. So I had like very strict curriculum, and I have to go with it, even though if it's like quicker, I have to keep pace. And if it's like too slow, I have to wait. So I cannot learn with my own pace. And and I did well, actually. So I was always number one until I graduated. Never was I number two. And I used what I learned at home, and it was a big advantage for me. And as soon as I finished high school, I received a scholarship from Germany. This is like wild. I'm a Bedouin.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a Bedouin.
Did you even know what it meant at that point to receive a scholarship from Germany?
No, it was all by accident, pure accident, because I really wanted to go to France, because I loved France, because there is so much advertisement, and I watch French TV. I like French music, what's her name? On est bien fait des choses, et mon ami la rose, mélodie ce matin. What's her name again? Yeah, I forgot her name. Mon ami la rose. It's very
Edith
long
Piaf.
song. Yes, yeah.
Yes, Edith Piaf.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a great movie made of Edith Piaf's life. It's a brilliant movie, yes.
Yeah, so I want France. This is all advertisement, and the magazines. So I want to go to France, but
Did you enjoy the French school? Did you enjoy the French school system, or was it hard on you? You did well, so what was it like as an experience?
I enjoyed a lot, but I went to two schools at the same time. So I went to the traditional Quran school and the French school. I went to the Quran school because I loved the friendship in the mosque, like what you would call in Canada Sunday school. I don't know whether you have it, but Americans always talk about it. So I love this Sunday school because I have so much freedom. So I can do whatever I want, and there is no pressure whatsoever. And ironically, the thing I learned in the Sunday school, in the mosque, I retain them to this day because I chose to learn them, And in the French school, yes, there was some kind of pressure, especially during the test. I don't like tests. I think tests are the worst thing that the Western civilization has come up with. I don't think tests are horrible. Why should I test anyone? If you don't want to learn something, just don't learn it, And if I was responsible for the system in my country, I would do away my first day with test. No test. You just learn as you want. And if you are a doctor, you just go to the hospital and work in the hospital. Your senior doctors would know whether you are qualified or not. If you are a computer engineer, you just go find someone to show them what you learn, and then they will give you a job, and they will see whether you can do the job or not. Because test is not indicative of anything.
Well, you had intrinsic motivation, obviously, and you loved to learn. So it was probably superfluous for you to have the pressure added. So you got a scholarship to Germany. What happened as a consequence?
So it was 1988. I was only 70. And it was the first time any member of my family ever traveled abroad. Aside from Senegal. Senegal is very close. It was the first time any member of my family ever boarded a plane. It was amazing. And I remember when the plane took off, I was frantically reading Quran because I memorized the Quran to this day. I know every single page. And this student who already went to France said, "Are you scared?" I didn't know my answer, what was my answer, but actually I was scared. But I'm sure I told him I wasn't scared.
Well, it's not surprising. I mean, first of all, you were on a plane for the first time and you're not familiar with them. And then you're going to a completely foreign country and no one in your family has ever done that. And tell me about the tribe. You said you were from the tribe that was focused on books. What's the tribal organization? It's beyond the family, obviously. What does it look like?
So a tribe is kind of a small country. Like a tribe is a family name. So you have your tribe, that's your family. So if you are sick, they will provide you. If you get in trouble with another tribe, they will go to the tribe and they will make peace. If there is money that needs to pay, they would pay the money. Let's say if you kill someone, by mistake, so your tribe will pay for the family who lost that person, as like a kind of insurance. And I always say in Mauritania, we should adopt this tribal system, but the country should be one single tribe, just like in Canada. Canada is a big tribe because the Canadian state is the one that provides you with health insurance. They have set up insurance, damage insurance, to pay. And if you kill someone by mistake, your insurance pays, i.e. your tribe. And I think that's the best way I could describe what a tribe. I think it's...
How many people would compose the tribe that you belong to? How large was it? About?
I don't have any scientific number, but I would say when I was growing up, I would randomly say 100,000.
And how many tribes are there in Mauritania? Do you know?
A lot of tribe in all shape and form. Not only the warrior tribe, you have the warrior tribe, you have the book tribe, i.e. Zawaya, and you have the almost serving tribes, like the tribe who provide services, like artist. This is like almost independent tribe, and all they do is just like entertainment. And you have, unfortunately, I have to admit, we had slaves. They just like serve, you own them and they serve you. In, I think, 81, this was abolished, but we need to face up to this horrific past and just...
Well, we all have a lot of horrific past to face up to.
Yes.
So...
Unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately. Well, hopefully we can do better. That's the plan, right? So All right, so you got on the plane and you read the Quran on the plane and you made it to Germany. You must have, it's no wonder you were afraid. I mean, what did you think was waiting for you there?
So I had no clue. I like surprises because when I was sitting like with one of the people in the studio, and then someone asked me, so what are you going to talk to Jordan about? I said, I have no clue. And then he said, and I said, I don't care, whatever. And I like surprises, and I'm very curious, just like you. And so we arrived in Paris because I had to change there was no direct flight to Frankfurt. So I changed the first thing I saw in Paris, and I'm ashamed to say this, everything was clean.
Mm.
And everybody was wearing very tight clothes, and everything was in place. And the women were wearing very nice clothes. Everything was and of course, that was the impression. Later on, I noticed that the clothes are really not very comfortable, for some reason, because the boo and the African loose clothes were worn for a reason. And so I took my plane. I had 80. I had in my pocket about $12, $12 or $13. That the money that my family gave to me as a pocket money. 12 or 13, and 18 francs. 80 francs. And so I took my plane and we arrived like 11 p.m. in Frankfurt. I did not speak English. I did not speak German. So I came there, and then they stamped my passport. And then for some reason, with gesture, everything, they showed me the hotel where I spent the night. And then it was Sheraton. For the first time, Jordan, I sat in a room alone. And that was very scary because my family was big, my family was very loud, and every time, at every moment, someone is watching you.
Right, so you were alone for the first time in a foreign country where you didn't speak the language.
Yes, and alone physically, with no one.
Yes, right, I understand.
Yes. And that was very scary to me. And because I in a very weird way, my privacy was defined by the people around me because they were my cocoon, because I trust them. I'm not afraid of them. I could do everything in front of them. But now I'm alone. It was like the people I'm used to were filled with ghosts, but I'm afraid of ghosts. And then I took a shower and I did like just everyone. I loved the towels. I loved the small, teeny tiny soap. I stole everything. I put it in my bag. That was my first theft. And so I fell asleep watching German TV. I didn't understand anything. And then a friend of mine who came with me, whose family is a little bit richer, and they used to go to Paris, not him. He came, knocked at my door, said, Mohammed, we can eat for free. This is a hotel. I said, really? I said, yes. He took me to the elevator. Last night, I took elevator, but I was so tired, I didn't pay attention to this, like, miracle. Something that small room that you get into, and then zzz, and then it stops. It's very disorientating because I didn't know how many stairs I made up and down. And then we went to this buffet, very huge, with a lot of people, white people, European people, by and large. And I'm a small Bedouin. And then there was everything, eggs, all types of bread, marmalade, all kinds of teas. But this was the proverbial German Die Qual der Wahl, the torture of too many choices. I only used in Mauritania, tea and bread. And when we were like doing really good, they give me butter in my bread and marmalade, really good stuff. So this all was new. And I was telling myself, I need to eat something because I would look foolish and I would look strange if I don't eat something. And then I choose eggs because I know how to eat eggs, or at least I thought. And then I sat there. I felt like everyone was looking at me. Everyone put everything down, and I was the scene. And then I broke the eggs. It was not cooked very well. And I hate half-cooked eggs. we say in Mauritania, I found myself with thorny twigs between my legs. So I couldn't move forward, and neither could I move backward. And so I thought, I need to get out of this place. And then I hid the egg somewhere, and I drink that. It was horrible. It was Lipton. I hate Lipton, you know. I love my tea being very well cooked and very well brewed, because this is tasteless to me. Like, a bag, you put it in hot water, there is no taste to it. Then
so all that food, you got half-cooked eggs and bad tea.
Talking about bad luck. And then we took the plane to the city of Saarbrücken at the border to Senegal, very close to Metz. Strasbourg. And so we took a small plane, and because the small plane was really very wobbly, I thought God want to punish me now. This plane is going to crash because I stole the soap from the hotel. And then I was like praying frantically, and I promised myself, I took it upon myself never to steal anything anymore. If I survive this very bumpy ride. And we arrived at Saarbrücken. I started the language, I studied, and I graduated in telecommunication microelectronics a few years later. And
how many years did you study there?
I stayed in Germany 12 years. I studied and I worked. So.
And you picked up German and English there, or just German when you were there?
Just German. I picked English mostly in prison.
So, okay, what happened in Germany?
What happened
you
in
studied,
Germany?
You got your degree? And was it a technical? What educational institute was it that you attended?
So I attended. I will say the name. It's very long, very boring. Gerhard Mercator University of Duisburg. Now it's called University of Duisburg Essen, and I studied microelectronics. Telecommunication. That is a very fancy way to say that you can program and you can set up computer networks, and
how did you choose? How did you choose that? How did you choose your course of study?
Peer pressure. I wanted to be a pilot, but I had problems during my first year, and my friends told me that this is useless because in Mauritania back then we had a fleet of 2 airplanes. In whole Mauritania, 2 airplanes. And this is only like rich kids, they could go and make this pilot license. And I wouldn't have a job. They said the future is like microelectronics and so. And I just wanted to study that because my friends told me that in Germany.
And how did you make friends there? And how long did it take you? And what was your family? How were you communicating with your family?
Yeah, we didn't have WhatsApp. I can't tell you that much. And we only had this phone, but we didn't have a phone at home. So I had to call my brother at work and tell him that I'm doing well. And then he relayed the message to the family, because we didn't have a phone at home. That was in the early 90s.
And were you lonesome? Were you excited? Like, how was your life when you got to Germany?
You know, I was, most of the time I was very depressed because of the cold. And
Because of the cold?
Because of the cold, and I went through a lot of depression because of, my, Germany is a lot of they have very distinct look to them. And I look different. And that did not help me a lot. German people are very nice people. But whenever I went to places and so, especially when I travel back and forth, they always put me on special screening. And I hated myself. And, I was very young. And I always looked in the mirror and said, I'm really a very, very bad person, because why did they pick me from all those people,
And so what did you make of that? What was your explanation for that? I mean, you said you thought you were a bad person. But did you experience, you said that the Germans were nice people, but you talked about this screening. So did you experience other forms of treatment that made you feel that way? Or was it primarily the airport screening?
Not only. Also, when you look for a job, during the like vacation, they always prefer like native German, which I kind of understand. But this all like, I'm not giving any value judgment to any of this, Jordan. I'm just telling you how I felt. I had very low self-esteem. And then I started to completely neglect myself, neglect like what I wear, which made the things worse.
Was it because you were alone? I mean, you said you hadn't been alone, and now all of a sudden you were basically on your own in this strange country. I mean, how much of being detached from your family and your tribe, for that matter, do you think contributed to your depression and the darkness, perhaps, and the cold, all of these things?
Yes, a lot. Your family is the one that gives you your self-esteem. My mother is the one who tells me, you have value. You are a good person. You are a very important person. And I have always to be reminded of who I am. And in Germany, I tend to forget, who I am. And I tend to forget those people value me. My mother values me no matter what. And it's like every time is a wake-up call. Okay, I'm a very important person to my family, to my surrounding. And I always remember this eerie music at airport. Martha, Otto, Heinrich, Emil, Martha, Emil, Dora, Otto, Ulrich, Otto, Ulrich, Ludwig, Dora, Siegfried, Ludwig, Anton, Heinrich, Ida. This is the German code to spell my name over the phone, so to see whether I'm a wanted person. And this is very hurtful to me, and my life would not get any better. And I tell you why, because we need to mention the elephant in the room here. Why did the United States arrest me, kidnap me? Why were they interested in me?
Yes, well, we definitely want to get to that.
Yes. So if you want, I can go ahead and tell you.
Well, so you're in Germany, you've been there a number of years, so let's progress with the story. And
that story was, I would say, 3 minutes phone call that completely changed my life. I would never be talking to you if it hadn't been for that phone call. So I wasn't doing very well. So I'm not saying, I was doing very well and then this phone call. So I was like struggling in my marriage, and I was looking for jobs because like I told you, I wasn't German, and it was very hard. And my papers were not, I didn't have like the green card, but I was still waiting to get my green card. And I just got it actually when I had this phone call. My life started to get really good. And the phone rang. I was living in Friedrich-Ebert-Straße. I remember. And I picked it up. It was my brother, my ex-brother-in-law. And he asked me, he said, my father is very sick and I need your help. I said, of course. He said, I have some money, but I cannot transfer it. But I can send it to you to Germany and then you can send it to my father. I said, no problem. I think it was about $5,000, if I remember correctly. A lot of money. And that's it. That was the phone call. He sent me the money, and I took it physically, and I gave it to some of the people who come back and forth, do commerce in Germany, and I know. And but there was a problem with this phone call. This phone call was conducted from a mobile satellite phone that belonged to the late Osama bin Laden. And my brother-in-law was a close friend to Osama bin Laden. So the American, put one and one together, and they assumed that I was up to no good because Osama bin Laden back then already declared war against the United States, against innocent people of the United States. I was not aware of any of these. No, I was aware of the problem. And when they investigated, when I was taken into custody, but no, I'm forwarding really too fast. So the
money was sent to you, and you distributed it to some people to get it to your friend's father. That's what happened.
Correct. That's it. So the money trail was very clear where the money landed, because I was not the only person he contacted that day. He did 2 phone calls I know of. He contacted me, and he contacted the person who would receive the money in Mauritania.
Do you think he had any sense that he was putting you in danger?
To be perfectly honest, it's very hard to read what was in his mind, but he completely changed my life in a very negative way.
Right. Well, and you did say that his father was ill. And so obviously he was, at least in principle, motivated to help his father. So perhaps that was obscuring his vision. I mean, did he know do you think he knew that there was a possibility that using telecommunication equipment that was associated with bin Laden might not be such a good thing for you? I mean, maybe he didn't. I'm just curious what you think.
He did not consult me. So he made this decision for me, that's for sure. And I don't think that he thought that the phone was even tapped.
Right.
But he didn't know that some people who were sitting with Osama bin Laden day in, day out were working with the CIA. Very close friends of Osama bin Laden were transmitting information to the CIA, And he was very blinded, I guess. And I have to mention, he was investigated, and he is now free man, and they did not find any connection with him and any wrongdoing.
I see.
He was just associate of Osama bin Laden. They were like friends, but he did not engage with him in any attacks or anything. So I just need to mention that.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned that you were married. So you got married in Germany?
Yes. My ex-wife is a Palestinian German. And, at that, And I wasn't like doing well in my marriage, so I have to say that. And, I don't know whether you ever found yourself in a relationship where you don't want to get out of it because you don't want to bear the shame of being the person who is responsible for breaking up, the relationship. But you didn't win the relationship somehow. I was in that very bad situation.
Right. So you had a couple of things that weren't going so well. So you were depressed about your situation in Germany, and your marriage wasn't going well. And then this phone call came, and you transmitted the money. What happened after that?
After that, everything went downhill. So this was like late 98, early 99. So the police, I was not arrested. I was never interrogated. I was never held. I was never invited by the police. Never. So Germany found no ground to arrest me or to even question me. But they went to our imam, that is like the priest, the equivalent of a priest in church. And they made an appointment with the imam, and they told him, this one of the people who come to your mosque is being investigated. And then he was laughing. And when they showed him the picture, he told me later on, he said, this guy wouldn't hurt a fly. I know him very well. They said, that's maybe, we may even agree with you, but a very powerful country is interested in him. And this was like almost a tip off that I should be careful not to travel. But I freaked out. And then I had a friend.
You heard this from the imam? Did he
Yes.
told you this had happened? And so
Yes.
what did you think when he told you that?
Actually, I wasn't surprised because my family already called me. Because when I was called, he also called my other cousin who would receive the money. My cousin was arrested immediately and put in prison for 2 months. So my family knew that he was being wanted. He was wanted. And they told me never to receive any phone calls from him and not to accept his phone call and not to accept to interact with him. So I wasn't surprised, actually.
Right. You knew something was up and not something good.
Yes.
And who
out.
who got arrested? Was it the person you delivered the money to or the person who sent the money?
No, the person whom I delivered the money to.
The
other person was never arrested, ever.
And was the person who received the money arrested in Germany?
No. Germany is a country ruled by law. They don't arrest you. He was arrested in Mauritania because at least back then it didn't respect the proper legal procedure. And because the US government sent 2 notices, one to Mauritania and one to Germany. Germany says we cannot arrest him without evidence. Mauritania said we arrest him. That's the difference.
So you received the money in Germany. Did you give the money to this person in Germany and then he went back to Mauritania?
No, I sent it to him. So I sent it to him to what they call loosely hawale. So you give to a person in Germany, and the person call his family or his associates to give the money in Mauritania because
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
I
changed. They changed money, currency.
Okay. So you used a service that moved money.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, that's it.
Okay.
So I freaked out, and I said, I need to leave Germany. I cannot live in a place where people think I'm a bad person. And then, I did. So my friend lived in Montreal. Mohsin, his name is Mohsin. He's 5 years my senior. He finished his study at the same university. We became very good friends. And he moved to Canada. And he was working and living in Canada. He was Canadian. He became Canadian citizen when I arrived. And he told me, Canada is a very good country. You have what you study is very wanted, and you can apply. And I applied. I had this as a plan B. And I was accepted right away, because they need a lot of IT people and so on and so forth. And then I said, I'm moving to Canada, joining my friends. And in November of 99, I purchased one-way ticket and I moved to Canada. As luck had it, in December, 15th of December, a person by the name of Ahmed Rassam tried to cross the Canadian-US border with explosive and harm innocent people. So Americans said, okay, what's going on? So this guy had a phone call from Osama bin Laden's phone, and he came to Canada 1 month later, a guy who attended this mosque.
And a one-way ticket.
Yeah, one-way ticket. And they made this very wild theory based on circumstances that was very wild and very harming to me. And they called me the mastermind of a millennium plot. And of course, they told Canadians were very worried, obviously. But Canadian could not arrest me because there was no evidence, obviously, because I don't know the guy. I never heard of him. I never met him. And let alone like conspiring with him to harm innocent people in the US. And
so did they assume that you were associated with this person who had been bringing explosives in?
That I was the mastermind. I
see.
The one.
You planned that, and this was your next step, was it?
Correct. Yes, correct. And so Canadian did not arrest me, but they were very aggressive. They put like listening device in the apartment where I lived, and they spied on my conversation. I would know that later on in Guantanamo Bay because I was faced with my phone calls in Montreal. Confronted, I mean. And so American said, this guy is very smart. He does not leave any trail. This guy, he speaks like German, Arabic, French, and he's engineer, and he's not going to leave a trail. So we need to lure him to a place where there is no law, because we cannot arrest him in Canada, we cannot arrest him in the US, we cannot arrest him in Canada in Germany, because we don't have the evidence. He needs to provide the evidence himself.
So they assumed you were an engineer, that you were multilingual, that you had purchased a one-way ticket to Canada, that you were associated with bin Laden, that you were tangled up with this previous terrorist. That was all part of and that you were smart enough to cover your tracks.
Yes, and I needed to be arrested and to be roughed up, quote unquote, in order to tell them everything. And people were freaking out. And I'm very sympathetic to law enforcement, especially in democracies who try to protect people. And I could see the logic behind everything. What I couldn't see is like treating someone outside the rule of law, because Canada is advanced, Canada is safe because of the rule of law. In the Middle East, countries are either failing or failed countries because the lack of the rule of law. Because ironically, those gloves, the gloves of the law, are the ones that keep countries safe and prosperous. So Canadian intelligence, American intelligence, and Mauritanian intelligence agreed to an operation that would have me lured outside of Canada and kidnapped. So the Mauritanian intelligence approached my mother, and they said, Mohamedou is in a lot of trouble in Canada, and you need to call him back home. And so we could clear his name, and he could go back to Canada and work just like anyone.
And who made that claim? Sorry, who contacted your mother?
The Mauritanian intelligence.
The Mauritanian intelligence, okay.
Correct. Or the lack thereof. So, and so my mother, she was a Bedouin, and her understanding that the state, we should abide the state, especially in a military, like I grew up in a military dictatorship, and we were very scared, very afraid. And whatever happens, she did not understand Canada is a country ruled by law, and I shouldn't be afraid to be in Canada. So she said, whatever happens to me, it's better to happen in Mauritania than to happen in Canada, because all countries are the same. And so she called me, said, I'm sick, you need to get home. I purchased my ticket the next day, and I left Canada on January 20th of 2000. I arrived in Dakar, Senegal, where my family waited on me on January 21st, 2000. From the airport, I was kidnapped and interrogated in Senegal.
And who picked you up? Who kidnapped you? And why do you use that phrase specifically?
I don't know. I guess. Okay. I guess why did I use it? So I think it would end up in a kidnapping because of what I'm going to tell you. So Senegalese told me, we arrest you. We arrest you in the name of law. On vous arrête au nom de la loi. We arrest you in the name of the law. That was very okay with me, very good. They took me to prison and they interrogated me, and then they said, there is no evidence against you, they told me. So you're free to go. Americans said he cannot go. They put me in a plane against my will. The Americans, they chartered the plane.
So you got freed from the Senegalese prison. And
yes.
Were you reunited with your family? What happened? What was exactly the sequence of events?
So Senegalese told me, Mohamedou, you're free to go. We have nothing against you. So Americans in the embassy, they asked them not to release me because they want me. So they sent a car, a SUV from the embassy, and the embassy took my custody.
And what did they tell you when they picked you up?
No talking, nothing. I was just put in chains, and then they took me, they chartered the plane, and they sent me to Mauritania.
So what did you think was going on?
I was thinking they want to torture me because they want me to, yes. Because they didn't want me to go back to Canada because they went so far. I went so far, I couldn't go back because Canada was like a protection for me, a protection for quote unquote bad guy. This is a bad guy, and he need to crack. He need to tell us what he did.
Did you know it was Americans that had picked you up when you got into the SUV?
Yes. I know because Senegalese told me Americans are the one who sent the report. They are the one who asked them to arrest me. We need to understand that Senegal is a democracy and it's ruled by law. So, but it's not strong enough to oppose the encroachment of American embassy. So they are not as strong as Canadian institution, because in Canada the U.S. embassy cannot take people because that would be in breach of grave breach of Canadian laws. So many people would get in trouble, But anyway, so they put me in that plane, very small, and it was so small that I could see the pilot. The pilot was a French female pilot, and she was just like a taxi driver with small plane, and she just chartered her small plane, to move people who are, from one place to the other. And I prayed, and I almost was fantasizing that the plane crashed and that I survived the crash, because I don't like pain. And I read so much about torture, and I don't like torture. So I was delivered to the Mauritanian.
Did you have any sense at that point of why you were in trouble?
I didn't know, but I kind of know, because Canadian came to my home and they told me, they interrogated me about Ahmed Rassa, but they didn't took
I
me to
see,
prison
I
or
see.
anything.
Right, right. And you knew also that there had been some trouble around the money transfer. And did you know at that point of this association with Osama bin Laden?
No, nothing
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
No mentioning even of the name of my former brother-in-law. And so I I cannot describe to you the pain of the prospect of being tortured. I cannot describe
What
that.
were you imagining? What did you think was going to happen?
I was very serene, and I was thinking like existential like question, because like one of my bodyguard seems to be very religious person, because he kept like praying in the plane. And I was asking myself, what is the role of religion? To how much can a religious person do? You know? And where does a religious person say, I'm not doing this, I'm stopping? And this was like too much like to think about, because a guard has to trust somehow the state, because he doesn't know who I am. You know, as far as they're concerned, like his boss told him, this is a vicious person. He was planning to kill random people, children, women, old people, young people, randomly at an airport in the US. So, and I was seeing my city, the city of Nouakchott, and I could see the palette after a storm, a sandstorm. You know, the colors, and people very tiny walking, and the favelas, you know, where I grew up, I could see everything. And the helplessness, you know, of me not being able to be happy, because in like 5 minutes, I would walk out of the plane, greeting my family, drinking tea, telling them stories. I knew I was going to a prison cell. I was almost certain I would be tortured. And I was thinking, what does it feel like to be tortured? I don't know. But I read books, and I was thinking about the brave people who survived torture. And I knew, Jordan, I was not a brave person, because I want to crack at the very first moment, you know? I did not want to resist, because the pain, you know, I love this saying, Jordan. The most powerful weapon of your oppressor is in your mind.
You're right.
You know?
Yes. Well, that's why I was asking you what you were imagining, you know, because
I was
that could
defeated.
be terrible.
I was absolutely defeated, and the pain I felt in my stomach, in my abdomen, and I felt like in my mouth, very bitter taste in my mouth, and you know, the helplessness. You know, I mean, Jordan, you have to appreciate where you live. You have to appreciate that you grew up in a democracy, and you take it for granted that no one can take you without giving you a reason why they take you to the police. And you have a big mouth. You can say, no, I need a lawyer. I don't need to talk to you. And you can like start and develop your narrative with your lawyer, everything, you know, to save yourself. None of that. So in a country that is not ruled by law, you have none of these rights, you know. So they took me in Renault 12 from airport, very old. And, you know, Mauritania, we are like Bedouin, and they want to put a mask over my face, so I couldn't see. They didn't have a mask prepared. And then one of them gave me his turban that he used on his head. He said, you need to wrap this turban around your head very tightly. And I could smell his sweat, you know. And so they took me to a secret prison, and they start interrogating me. And so, and like my past start to come out. So in my past, in 91, between 90 and 92, I spent a couple of months on two different occasions in Afghanistan. They came to our mosque and they wanted like to gather like money. And so it was a very big like thing in Germany. And this was a campaign that was supported by Germany, supported by the US, by my government, by Canada, by the US, to help the mujahideen, the so-called mujahideen. And I was very young. I said, oh, I need to be part of this. And I went there and I didn't like it. And then I left. But this was nonetheless something I told them, I'm sorry I went there. And so, and so after 1 month of interrogation, Mauritanian, they did not torture me. They did not torture me. So, and they...
and did anything else come to light during that interrogation that cast you in a bad light, that was hard on your reputation?
No, nothing, because it turns out Mauritania knew that I went to Afghanistan because it's in my passport, because I went, there is a stamp in my passport, so they knew that. And what only came to light was that I don't know, they told me like American wouldn't provide them any evidence, and they were stuck because Mauritanian told Americans to take me, but Americans refused. And Mauritania like were actually breaking the law by offering me, because you cannot turn off a Mauritanian citizen once they hit the Mauritanian ground. So you have to try them if they did any crimes, no matter what.
So why do you think you weren't tortured? Was it a standard practice there, or not? And if so, why did you escape torture?
Okay, you see, like intelligence, like in authoritarian regime, they don't just jump on you and torture you. They have to have good reasons. So we have to be very objective when we describe things. So they told me, if I don't cooperate with them, they will torture me. If there is evidence, they have to know I'm hiding something. But Americans wouldn't provide them any evidence that I'm hiding anything that I didn't tell them. And I adamantly told them that I had no clue about Millennium Plot. I don't know Ahmed Rassam. I never met him. And American wouldn't give them any evidence to the contrary. So they
were somewhat inclined to believe you.
They did believe me. They did believe me, and they told American, either you give us the evidence or we're going to release him. And then American asked them a favor. They said, okay, take away his passport and don't let him go back to Canada. Mauritanian intelligence, as usual, ever breaking the law, they took my passport and they did not allow. And Canadians also asked them not to allow me to travel back to Canada, because Canadian found them in a very hot spot. Because Canada is very close to the US, and they just don't want any trouble with their big brother, and which is understandable. And I said to myself, okay, they took my passport. I went there. I applied for a job, and I found a very good job as a programmer and administrator. And I started like writing code. And until 9/11 happened, I was arrested, kidnapped, and that's it. And tortured.
All right, so you're in Mauritania. They let you out. You've been imprisoned there, but you have a story, and the Mauritanians accept the story. What happens after that?
So they told me I cannot travel because the United States did not want me to travel, and I said, okay, I just find a job in Mauritania. You know, my dreams of studying for my PhD in Canada were dashed. I said, it's okay. You know, I need to work anyway. And then I found a job in Mauritania, and I start feeding my family for like over a year until 9/11 happened. And everything changed.
So you're in Mauritania, 9/11 happens, but you're working and you're taking care of your family in Mauritania.
Yes.
And so 9/11 happens, and what happens to you? What's the consequence of that?
On 29th of September, that is about a little bit over 2 weeks after 9/11, I received a phone call again from the police, Mauritanian police. And then they said, we need to talk to you. I said, okay. The guy said, where are you? I said, where are you? I'm coming to you. And they said, okay, I'm at this and that place. And then I drove my car and met him. And he was very frank. He told me, American told us to arrest you. I said, why don't you tell them that I didn't do anything? He said, they're very angry because of 9/11, and just bear with me. They just will ask you some questions. They will let you go. And then they came and they brought a German translator. And then they interrogated me. I don't know who interrogated me. So a guy, maybe CIA, maybe FBI, maybe I don't know.
And where did that take place?
In Mauritanian prison.
Okay.
And they left. And then again, Mauritania released me. And then after 1 month, they took me again. And then they told me that American wants me in Jordan. And I lost it. I said, this is too much. Because I guess American figured out this is his home. This is his tribe. And this is a corrupt regime. Maybe they're protecting him. We need to take him outside of his comfort zone where he has no tribes, and we torture him. And then he will like tell us everything. And that's exactly what happened. So they took me to the airport.
Now, was that Mauritanians or Americans that took you to the airport?
Mauritanian.
Okay.
Mauritanian.
So you're taken to the airport?
Yes. And they put me in a plane with 5 people. 2 sex people. 2 pilots, because 2 pilots and 2 interrogators and 2 people with masks. They didn't talk. They just with masks. Like kind of commandos, special team. And so when they took me,
what were you thinking on this plane?
What should I think? It's just so much pain. I just died 1,000 times. You know, I know I was going to torture. I know 100% I was going to torture. And the ride was about 12 hours. And one of the airport was in Cyprus. Cyprus is part of the European Union, and they're signatory of Convention Against Torture, just like Mauritania. And I was hoping that they would board the plane and inspect the people, passports and everything, because for an African guy to get a visa to Europe, it's almost like next to impossible. But now I'm going through Europe without even a passport, and I want to be arrested as a criminal and put in prison, you know? And this never happened because everybody was on it. And I say, Jordan, this is one of the biggest betrayal of U.S. citizens. United States stood with Europe against the National Socialism, and Europe, after 9/11, enabled the United States to gravely violate human rights instead of standing up to the government, said, no, American people deserve better. And America is better than doing this. America is ruled by the law. America should lead the world in human rights. It should not violate human rights, because this would open a can of worms and would give like a carte blanche to all those horrific regimes to do whatever they want to do. And I landed in Jordan. And then I was put in this secret prison. And most of the time, I didn't know day from night. I was beaten only 2 times during 8 months. But the thing that hurt me so much when they took me to listen to torture sessions. They blindfolded me, they put me in a room, and they start torturing this person. For me to break. And I couldn't.
Do you think that was that taped? Do you think, or was it something that was happening right there? Do you think?
Jordan, I didn't know. I mean,
yes,
this is a very smart
That's
question.
Fine.
Smart question, but
I mean, it doesn't matter really from your perspective when you're there, but I'm curious, I suppose, about the methods.
Yes. I mean, it's horrific. The problem with that, I couldn't get the cries off my head.
Yeah.
So they put me back in my cell. I couldn't sleep. For days, and then I would plug my ears, and then I hear even louder when I plug my ears. The more I plug my ears, the more I hear it because it's in the brain, and the brain does not need your eyes or your ears to see or hear, because the brain can
How
hear.
often were you exposed to that sort of thing?
I remember maybe a dozen, but I was only moved twice.
So I have a question for you. If you had to be beaten or you had to listen to people being tortured, I know this is a terrible question, but it speaks to the intensity of listening to people being tortured. Which of those was more torturous?
Listening, absolutely, no question asked.
Why?
Because when they start beating me, a lot of anxiety and a lot of inside pain goes away because my body is weakened. And the problem is to have strong body and destroyed soul, because somehow the soul and body has to be balanced out. So if you threaten me, and then you put me in a situation, especially if you have power over me, put me in a situation that is so painful, and I'm eating myself from inside. But when you beat me and then you cause me pain, and that pain, this is horrible to say, but it's good for me because it weakens the sharpness of my mind to process the perceived pain that I may be receiving. It's like when you have depression and when you walk or when you work out is just torturing yourself, and then it dissipates somehow.
So how long were you in prison in Jordan?
Very good question. So I tried to keep a calendar in my head. So I say 1, 2, 3. I wasn't bad. So when they told me you are going out, they gave me a paper to sign. I was expecting July 31st, 2002. I saw in the paper July 20 or 21st. I don't remember. I was completely off, because nights and days somehow mixed with each other. I don't know why.
Well, you said you weren't sleeping well, and that's not surprising.
Yes.
And so that could easily, and I presume, how much time did you spend outside?
Maybe 20 minutes or 25 minutes outside.
Per day or in total?
No, in total.
Oh, so never really?
Yes.
And
Just
what did your
one
family...
time outside, and I was so scared because you are so vulnerable when you are exposed to torture, because you feel like I want my torture. I want to be close to my torture. I want my torture to be satisfied. You know, I want them to put me in this cell because that's what satisfies them. You know, I don't want to be in a big space. You know, and it's very weird to explain, you know, because I saw this torture has a godlike power. You know, they give you food. They talk to you. They said, if you are a good guy, I'm going to treat you well. If you are a bad guy, I'm going to punish you. This is immediate power, you know. And yes, so I want to tell you this epiphany a little bit because it's very important to understand like this kind of forgiveness that I really have in my heart. So they came to me. I was very weak after 8 months of battering, 8 months of mind destruction, mind and body. I was very weak. I was about less than 100 pounds, and I'm 171 or 172 centimeter. And less than 100 pounds is really very skinny. So they gave me, this guy throw a bag, a garbage bag in my cell, said, "You're going home." Then I took the bag. I had very small belonging, like this big, like underwear, and I think I had a t-shirt. That's it. And then he told me to turn around. Ironically, that's a sign of respect, to give your back side to the guard, because he wants to control you and put your hands behind your back and shackle you. And then he led me, always blindfolded. I was never let to see anything except when they push me inside the cell, and then they remove the. And then I sat in a chair like this, facing a guy, middle-aged guy. He spoke almost like a religious figure, and it was like everybody around him was like out of focus, because like a movie, you know, people who cannot see them very well. My eyes were glued on him, and he was telling me, "Okay, this is your belonging, okay." And I was supposed to sign that he was right. I got everything back. I think I had $80, something like that, or $100, I don't know. And then had my Canadian driver license, German driver license, passport. And he said, "Is this everything?" Of course, I said yes. What did he expect me to say? And so this summary judgment of that would show that the prison staff was good was done very quickly. And what I wanted at that moment, I want to pee. But I couldn't tell him I want to pee because I want to go home. And then they put me in this hearse, like blindfold, earmuffed, everything. Then they drove me to the airport. I could hear the roars of the engines because I was on the runway. And all of a sudden, someone started to like cut open my clothes with very sharp scissors. And then they stripped me completely naked, and they put a diapers on me. I figured I'm not going home, and I'm not going to another prison in Jordan. I'm going to the US. And this was like confirmed when this guy briefly removed the blindfold and opened my eyes, and I could see his blonde hair on his arm. He did not say anything, and he had like very black bag on his face, mask on his face, where could only see the eyes, and blue eyes, I presume. I don't know, really this fake memory, but I figured he is not a Jordanian, And I just imagined that this was the end of my life.
Did you think at any time then that you had your hopes been raised that you were maybe going home?
No, after this, I knew I was not going
before.
home.
I meant on the way, before you hit the airport. Did you think that maybe you were
crying.
going to be free?
I was crying all the time. And I was saying, this is the first time in my life I would enjoy a bathroom in an airplane. I hate bathrooms in airplanes. And this is so good. And I would meet my family. This is so like imagination. And then I was like, but I was kind of like destroyed mentally, because I was thinking, how could I live? Because I was in prison with good relationship with God, and I was like pure in my soul. And then now I'm going back to life. And in life you have to fight with people, and then you have to do the wrongs, because like occupational hazard of living your life. And then it hit me after that. After they start to put me in new clothes and diapers, that I would have a very long ride, and it's going to the US. And I figured I would die forgotten in a very violent American prison.
What do you think the purpose of the diapers was?
The purpose of the diapers, because very long flights. And you cannot, security, they will not take you to any place. You have to pee in your diaper.
I see. Okay.
So this is very important, because at least to my mind, because this moment changed my life forever. My life before this CIA team that took me from Jordan, and after the CIA took me from Jordan, are two different episodes that have very little to do with each other. And I tell you why. So when I came to the conclusion that I will die, this is it, this is my life done, I started to reflect on my past. And then I start to regret. And there is only one thing I regretted in my life. One single thing I regret. I regretted not to be nice enough to people. I regretted when I told my mom I didn't like this food is not as I expected. I regretted when I got sometimes angry, and I expressed my anger in a less than nice way. I did not regret not having money. I did not regret not having this beautiful woman I always dreamed about. I did not regret not being in a position of power in my life. All the things that demand so much effort and work had no value to me. And the things that are so easy to do in life are the ones that matter to me. Being nice. And I took it upon myself. If Allah, God, allows me to live again, I promise to be a nice person to everyone I meet, no matter what. And that's what the change in my life.
And why do you think that transformation occurred then? What's your understanding of why that occurred?
This is like the first time that I really thought that I will never see life again, that I will die in an American prison. Then I had to face my past, because that's, it's just facing death. And
it's strange, the way that facing death would make you reevaluate your life like that. Because in some sense you'd think it's a bit late, isn't it? I mean, if you think you're going to die, but then all those thoughts come to mind that you could have been a better person. And
yes,
it's
I know, but
it's like your soul is being weighed, in light of your impending death, and you're evaluating your whole life.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, this is like, in a very weird way, I think I'm lucky because I had the unique, experience, maybe not unique, but very few people had this experience. You had it, that they faced death. And they said, what should I change in my life? What should I change in my life? And I knew what I need to change. I know I don't need a lot of money. Of course, I love to have money. Of course. But I wouldn't break my back or break my head to make money. Absolutely not. But I make so much effort, painful effort, to be a nice person. And it's not easy to be a nice person.
And what do you mean by being a nice person? What does that entail as far as you're concerned?
Absolutely. So when I'm upset with you or with my family, I have to control what I say. I have to control what I do, because I always want to leave a good taste, no matter what. Also, when someone asks me for help, I have to provide them help without hurting myself. The only way I deny help if this very help is going to hurt me, and that's not a problem to me to deny, to not accept to help. And that's it. Just be nice to people, making a difference, smiling, to people, making them feel good. This is very important to me.
You said that when you were in Germany, that you had bouts of depression that were long lasting. What about now?
I'm very depressed. I have this PTSD episodes,
right,
that will send me to the hospital for many days, and I almost died. One of the reasons for this very bad episode was taking clonopin, what they call, at least in the US, clonopin. And this was started in prison because I was very, very much a vegetable when it comes. And then they prescribed me clonopin, and then they cut it cold turkey.
Yes, I have some experience with that.
Yes, I read.
That's terrible. It's terrible.
My God. You cannot explain to someone.
No, you can't. It was absolutely unbearable.
Oh my God. Oh my God. When I think about
How long did that last?
I don't know, because I didn't have feeling for time. But the pain, I kept hitting my head against the wall, and I was crying like a child. And this was definitely a malpractice, in prison, because I read later on that it could kill you,
It makes you wish you were dead, that's for sure.
Oh my God, it's horrific, like depression. You cannot describe depression to someone who didn't go through it, because I always told people, are you just a crying baby? Yeah. What hurt? So do you have injury, physical bodily injury? No. So why are you acting up very much? Why are you tripping? But this is when I have this episode. I cannot eat. I cannot drink. I cannot sleep. I'm so scared. I have always to have someone beside me, watching over me, and I'm much better now. But I acknowledge that I'm very vulnerable. I'm very weak. There are heavy stuff that I need to deal with, with professional help and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to put a brave face and try to sell you something that is not there.
Yeah. All right, so let's go back to the plane. So you're on the plane to the United States. And you think you're done?
Yes, I thought it was to the United States. And then I almost died because I couldn't pee in in the diaper. I kept squeezing, but my head refused to pee. And after what I thought 5 hours, the plane started to lose altitude. I was telling, no, this is not the US. US is not 5 hours. And then it landed, and then they took me out because I felt the wind. And then they put me in a chopper because very loud, I could hear through the ear. And then they put me in a truck, and then I start hearing language I never heard before. It's not English, it's not German, it's not Arabic. Turns out it's some tribal Afghani language that I never heard. So I landed, turns out, in Bagram Air Base. And then they took me to this prison, and I spent, they started torture in that prison. And but it's not like very heavy, they just like keep me like on my knees for very long hours. I couldn't see. And then very much. And then they put like strobe light over my head for hours. And first night, they came to me, took me. No, peeing first. So when they put me, they stripped me naked, and they put me in some clothes, and they sat me. And I peed, like there is no tomorrow. Then I felt so good. I didn't care what they did to me. Because now I peed, because now I felt I'm a free person. I'm surviving, And so they took me, they asked me what languages. They brought an Arabic translator. They asked me what languages I spoke. Then I said German, among others. They said, German? You're a liar. Because who speaks German in this world? No one. And then they brought a special agent, CIA agent, who spoke German. Right then. And then he spoke to me in German. And he looked at him and said, this guy speaks German better than I. And then he looked at me, he said, Wahrheit macht frei.
Truth.
Yes. Truth will set you free.
Truth will set you free.
Because what came in my mind is the sign, Arbeit macht frei.
Yes, that's what came to my mind too. Yes.
Yes. And it came to me that those people, Arbeit did not set them free. Work did not set them free.
No.
I know I was in big trouble. And then he interrogated me. He was not bad. He was like explaining to me a lot of American culture and so, and he told me very much that I was screwed, because in America, he told me accusation is enough. In this
situation
of time of our history, he told me, yes, that's enough. That's enough. You will not be free for a very long time. And he said, you may be guilty or not. I don't know. I don't have the information, but I can assure you that you would be treated as a guilty person. And he was very frank with me. And
the assumption would have to be on the part of the people that had now arrested you and that were bringing you back to the United States. They're all going to assume that you're guilty, obviously.
Correct. Absolutely. And this is the greatness of democracy, of the rule of law, that the state violence is kept in check. If the state violence anywhere in the world, it doesn't matter your culture, it doesn't matter whether you're Christian, you're Jewish, you're Muslim, you're agnostic, you're Buddhist. Human beings always commit atrocities against other human beings. And the state has so much tools of oppression that the state must not be just left without checks. I mean, it's okay to say Jordan is a bad person. That's okay to say, especially by the state. But the state cannot harm you or put you in prison if they don't have evidence that can be checked by a third independent party that does not subscribe to the bureaucracy of the state. And this is like everywhere. And this obsession, 9/11 was very horrific act, and let's say that full stop. So in the United States, there was a very big debate, whether democracy and the rule of law can protect the United States of America. And a lot of people in the CIA, in FBI, and what's not, believed that the rule of law is not enough. They have to go outside the rule of law in order to protect the United States. And they have this obsession with dictatorial regimes from the Middle East. I know this because they told me that, they don't need gloves. They go down and dirty. And so, and I was like, oh my God, I grew up in a military dictatorship, and people are not safe in a military dictatorship.
Well, democracy might not make people safe, but there isn't an alternative that makes them more safe. So
absolutely. And democracy is millions times safer than dictatorships, because in a dictatorship, there is no way around corruption. There is no way around corruption, in a dictatorships, and the corruption would hit also the security apparatus, and I know this because I could see the contrast where I grew up during military rule and Germany. Germany, you can walk anytime you want. No one is going to hurt you. And in Germany, no one can arrest you without due process, And this whole obsession that, we need to treat people outside the rule of law. That's how we protect. I say this is wrong. And this is just an opinion. This is not a scientific. I don't have a scientific, but I would say it's wrong. And the empirical evidence is in the what we see. Western democracies are much safer than any other country in the Middle East.
So back to the helicopter.
I was taken out of the aircraft and put in a chopper. And I have to mention that the CIA did not torture me during the trip from Jordan. No, this guy was very gentle. He didn't hurt me. And that wouldn't be the role in the future, because in Guantanamo Bay and in Bagram, every move, the guards who moved me, they roughed me up, and they used the move from one place to the next to inflict pain on me, like pinching me or dragging me, or run away. And they know I cannot run because I have shackles on my feet. But this all happened, I think, on the instructions of my interrogators. So anyway, so they took me, and I peed for the first time on my knees. And that felt really, really good. I didn't care about anything else. And I was stripped naked again. And then they took a hair, from my hair, and they interrogated me. The first interrogation they didn't seem to be very well informed about who I was. They just had a script. It was like, where is Osama bin Laden? Where is Mullah Omar? Mullah Omar is the former president of the Taliban. And they didn't know that I was in a prison. I wasn't out there. I wasn't picked up from a battlefield. So I had no clue.
And where did that interrogation take place?
Right when I was taken out of the chopper. And So interrogation was done. They took me, put me in an isolation cell. And this woman came to me. She said, if you want to go to the bathroom, I remember this, you can ask this person, because there was no bathroom in my cell. And, like, I didn't speak English, and bathroom sounded like Badezimmer, like just literal translation, but in German means something else. It means a place where you take a bath. And I was thinking, oh my God, those people are so nice. I really want to take a bath. I said, I want to go to the bathroom. And they took me to a, to a barrel full of human feces, and just, put in a place. And they said, this is the bathroom. So, because they didn't have like bathrooms, like they have just like barrels, and then detainees would do in the barrels. And it's very tricky because it's hanging. It's like very high up. And then that was my first English, real English word. So that bathroom is not a place to take a bath. And I was taken to Guantanamo Bay, and it was very torturous. I mean, they, again, so we were put in the same shackle. We were about 34, I think, detainees. And there was a shackle that, connected all of us. And they start processing us, blindfold, all kind of shackles, and put us in the plane. And I couldn't breathe because I have claustrophobia. I almost died, And this guy came to me and he told me, forget about it. I never forget this. And it was like, okay, either I survive or I die. So I'm not going to get any relief. Because I wanted him to remove the mask on my face because I couldn't breathe because of the mask. Just like this corona mask, but I couldn't breathe with it. I think mostly because of my claustrophobia. And we arrived in Guantanamo Bay after, I think, more than 30 hours. And it was like, oh my God, I was so happy that I arrived somewhere, because so much pain, everywhere. And they pushed me, in what seemed like open space. And then I felt the sun. And then, I was like, this is much better. In my mind, now I'm under the full authority of the United States. No more torture.
So you were 30 hours in transport before then? You thought it was about that?
I think it was more.
And
yes.
What kind of transport was it? You said you were on a plane?
Yes, and the plane changed places. I think changed place and stopped somewhere. Stopped somewhere once or twice.
Right. So it wasn't a direct flight.
No, it wasn't. And so I arrived. So we started off on the morning of 4th of August 2002, and we arrived the next day, 5th of August. And they processed us. And I remember this gentleman coming to me, and he spoke in Russian to me. And I didn't speak any Russian. And then, we were all naked because they stripped us in the room. And those, you cannot get those images out of your head. You are naked, watching naked people around you, And this guy looked at me. I was smiling all the time, and This guy looked at me and said, "Where did they capture you?" I remember this question, and I didn't understand it. I kept saying, "What?" He kept saying, "Where did they capture you?" And then he was very frustrated with me. And then he said, "Never mind," something like "never mind." And then I understood. I said, "Home," something like that. And because I was captured home, and the last thing I saw when the police came to me was the image of my mother as we drove away with the police. I saw her in the rear view mirror because I was driving my car, and a policeman sat beside me. And she was getting smaller, 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 until I turned right, and then she disappeared. At that point, I did not think that I would never see my mother again. But I never saw my mother again. I was never allowed to attend her funeral. I was never allowed to say goodbye to my mother. And so we arrived, and my first interrogation, they put me in a room. And, I was like being kind of demanding because I thought, oh, this is a cell. And I said, but this cell is small, but it was really big room. Human beings are very, they always like compare. And I thought this is like very small room. And then I tried to stand up and discover my surrounding. There was no one. And then I was dragged really forcefully down. And then I saw there is a bolt holding me to the ground I was not aware of. And then I realized I'm not free in this room. I cannot move around. There's these three gentlemen came in the room. One is Bill. He said his name is Bill, and he's from the FBI. He was about my age, 30, about early 30, 31. And another person by the name of Paul. His name is Paul. I know his name. And then
I'm
another
amazed
person,
you can remember these details.
And then a translator from Morocco, because I didn't speak English. And then they came to my room, and then they started asking me questions. And Paul had an empty water bottle, and he kept spitting in it. And I was saying, what does he spit? And then it was like very disgusting and black. And then later on, I learned this is normal in the US. I was like looking at the US as, very sophisticated people, and they have like.
So he was chewing tobacco.
Yes, he was chewing tobacco. They were spitting in front of everybody, and everybody could see the disgusting like spit, very thick, very black. And I know I'm not sophisticated. I know my people are not sophisticated. I know that because that's where I grew up. But my image of Americans, because of the movies, very sophisticated, very like clean, very organized. That was my first glimpse. I know they're just like other human beings. And I was just waiting on the other FBI guy to pick his nose, because that's the next level, spitting in a bottle. You need to pick your nose to complete the picture. And they didn't do anything. They asked me whether I was mistreated in Jordan. I said, I don't want to answer that question. And that was for a couple of reasons. I didn't want to tell them that it's possible to torture me. I didn't want them to know it's normal. And the second thing, I didn't want them to trick me into giving them details. I just want to keep it very, very brief with them. So no information about that torture. They said it's not necessary. But they told me in the United States, we don't torture people. And I was very happy, because that's what I thought too, because I watched Married with Children, a comedy. It was very funny. Uh, and I watched Law and Order back home. So this is America, funny, and the rule of law. And so they kept this interrogation like almost on a daily basis, but I wasn't confessing to any amazing stuff. They were not discovering anything, and that was very frustrating to them. So the commander of the base and other people demanded that I need to be put in a program to encourage me to cooperate with them. I was blissfully unaware, but in Washington they were devising a program of torture, so-called enhanced interrogation technique, that was devised just for me, and I don't know everything is in there, but I think it's a document that is accessible, but what I received was sexual assault. I mean, full physical contact. It's not like dirty talking or that, because that happened too, but I mean direct, like sexual assault, rape. And that was really bad. And then the first 70 days when they took me, I remember the first day. So the FBI came to me on 22nd of May 2002. And the FBI guy, no, 2003, sorry, my bad. And the FBI guy, his name was Robert Seidler. He gave me a book called America and Its People. It's about the history of America, it's, and I love history, and it helped me also.
Had you learned to speak English by that point?
Yes, a little bit, with very heavy accent, but I understood almost everything I read because of my French vocabulary. And I like to read a lot, especially in prison, whenever they give me something, I keep reading it. So I read this America and Its People many times. Like, it's very academic. And and he told me, this is the last day. His boss told him that I was not giving him the information. And he told me that my life was going to change, and that he wants me to cooperate with the next team. And so later on, I think 1 month, so they another team tried to intimidate me, everything, like military and other undefined agencies. But I told them, no, I'm not talking to you anyway. So you can do whatever you want, kind of. Was very defiant, kind of. Very stupid from me. And
well, what would have been your alternative? What else could have you done, do you think? Was there anything else other than? I mean, if you had nothing to confess, it's not that straightforward to cooperate, obviously.
Yes, it's impossible. Damn you do it, damn you don't. Because, look, I thought about this a lot. Because if you confess without torture, that's very heavy burden. I had to wait on torture because that's the only way you could, and this is hindsight, you could explain, I didn't do this. This is torture, so I was very scared, but I kept saying, you need to tell me what I did, and then I can cooperate with you. As long as you don't tell me, I'm not going to cooperate. And I was very measured and logical and defiant and even smart kind of smart with them. Like, I can tell you, for instance, they tell me, ask me, like FBI ask me question, even before the program. Okay, they ask me the same question next day. And I say, you asked me yesterday and I answered. And then they would say, but we want to make sure you are not lying. And I would say, I remember all the lies I said since I left home. So I was comfortable enough to let out my frustration with them. You know, this is going to change dramatically. So they came to me, the guards, and then they came in front of my cell on mic black, and they said reservation. That's the code word that you are going to be taken away. And I said, where? Because usually they tell you interrogation or medical or something. So why they take me? They told me it's none of your business. And I knew I was in trouble. And then so they had these rubber gloves. And then when they start put me in shackle, I read on the rubber glove, India Black. And then I told detainees, my co-detainees, I'm going to be taken to India. India Black is torture black. So we know that because there was only, the block was designed for 30 detainees, but there was only one detainee. They take only 1 or 2 detainees for torture. So so when they took me there, I found 1 detainee, and soon that detainee was taken away. So I was by myself. The first 70 days in that block, no sleep. So, and you would ask, how couldn't you sleep? Sleep is just sleep, you know? So the way they did it, interrogation 24. So they have like 3 shifts. So 1 interrogator, then the next interrogator, then the next interrogator. Just like, you know, like a conveyor belt in a car industry plant.
And how did they keep you awake? I mean, after a couple of days, you must have been like falling asleep at every second.
Correct. So they put me back in my cell, and then they let me lie down, and then the guard kept banging every like 1 hour or so. They come and bang at my door, and it's so cold you cannot sleep because freezing cold in the cell, and I didn't have proper clothes. So it was, to be honest, the recollection is really hazy because I was not in the state of mind to remember. I may have a lot of false memories, but I can only tell you with the best of my guess what went on. And later on, they made very efficient methods, that most efficient. I know this is bad because other people who would like to torture people, they would know this, but I can tell you, very efficient. Every hour, they wake me up and they make me drink water. Every hour. Wake you up, make you drink water. You can never sleep when someone does this to you because you will always go to the bathroom continuously. You will like be half asleep, going to the bathroom, half asleep, going to the bathroom, half asleep, over and over and over. The only method they didn't do to me, and the guard told me about it because I confessed, I falsely confessed, was shower. He told me, and the other detainee, they put him under the shower and they turn on the shower 24/7. I wasn't looking forward to that. So I didn't know because I kept negotiating my torture. I kept telling them I'm dying, you know, and actually it was true because Gul Rahman died, another detainee. This is on record. Gul Rahman, you can look it up. He died in the cold room. He couldn't take it because hypothermia set in, and they found him dead in his cell.
And so the room was artificially cooled?
Yes. But I have to say this: they didn't like bring to my mind. They didn't bring like special equipment to cool it down. They just like completely cranked up the AC to its fullest, you know, because the AC was not designed to kill people. But I do believe that where you grow up, I'm sure a Canadian will not die under an AC, but a Mauritanian like me, growing up in the desert, it's very harmful to them because my body is not used to this type of temperature. And I kept telling them, "You are killing me." I mean, and I remember this doctor because when I say like these things, I'm saying with love because I know American people are good people, just like any, like Canadian, like Mauritanian, by and large, are good people. And I remember this doctor, I think he's a commander or in the Navy. He was a doctor. And part of the program, torture program, I'm not allowed to take medication, okay, for pain relief, because that would defeat the purpose of the torture. But I was really very sick because of my sciatic nerve. And they took me to this doctor, commander. He has a leaf. I think they call it a commander. And he looked at them. He said, "Remove the shackles." And then they removed. He said, "Do not give me detainees with shackles on my table." Something like that. He was very upset. And then I saw my window. I said, "Oh, this is a good guy. I need to complain." You know, I was like drowning and I was just seeing anything and trying to say was. I said, I'm having so much pain. I really need you to talk to them to stop this. He told me I cannot. He told me that he cannot interfere with interrogation, you know, but he would write a report that I'm really very sick. And he did write the report. And the reason why I know he did, because years later on, my interrogators found the report in their discovery. Discovery means when your lawyer asks for secret documents, you know, related to your case. And but I was just like doing nothing. I let them do their things. I'm not talking to them, nothing. Just like a stone every day. And sometimes I say a little when they like be nice to me, but say something that has nothing to do with anything. And one day, it was, I think, August 23rd, when I remember correctly, of 2003. August 23rd. A police lieutenant by the name of Richard Zoli, later on I learned he's from Chicago, and he's very infamous because he was involved in torturing some people back in Chicago, in the US mainland. He came to me and I sat in front of him. He was very stern, very serious, and he handed me a letter from DOD and he asked me to read it. In that letter, it says that due to the lack, something like due to the lack of my cooperation, the US government has had no choice but to arrest my mother and put her in only man prison. And that they know that I was involved in Millennium Plot and in the atrocious acts of 9/11, etc., etc. I didn't know how to answer, but I because I was very scared, I told him this is unfair. I didn't know what to say. And he told me, we are not looking for justice. We are trying to stop people from driving planes into the buildings. Something like that. I'm sure his English is much better than mine. And I was like, okay, go ahead and look for those people, you know. So when he left, I knew I had nothing more to lose, and I was ready to confess to everything and anything. And but I didn't know how. I didn't know how to start it, you know. But he helped me. So I don't know, a couple of days later on, or one day, I don't remember, I was in the interrogation room with Staff Sergeant Mary. Mary, you know, she has her humane side, even though she actively participated in torture, notably in sexual assault. She was kind of, at least ambivalent about what she was doing. And these like three masked men came to the room, and then one of them was holding German Shepherd, and the other started just putting me down, beating me everywhere, like viciously beating me. And then she stood up and she was crying. She was like, "Why you do this? Why you do this?" Like it was like total chaos. Then they took me out of the room, never stopped beating me until I stopped breathing because I couldn't breathe anymore because my ribs broke. And it was like the pressure on my lungs and the pain of breathing through your broken ribs is just so painful. And I was like all the time, and they were like making fun of this noise. I couldn't see anything, Then they took me. They start putting this water, forcing this salt water, my nose, my mouth. And then they give me to another team. I don't know, 3 hours, and then another team. And Richard Zuli stood. I could hear him in the pause before they gave me to the next team. He was like, kind of, we appreciate the cooperation of all countries to take down the terrorists, something like that, And this guy with Egyptian accent, his English was very poor. And another guy from Syria, he only spoke Arabic. I would say Syrian accent to be precise, because there was no way for me to know he is, Jordanian accent. So they took me. And those people utilize a different technique. So what they did, they strapped me on a chair, very like strong chair, and then they put something over my body, like overall, I believe, and then they start beating me until I couldn't take anymore. And then they fill everything with ice, everything. Then when the ice start to melt, they come back and beat me. And they were saying that I will confess, and they are going to take me to Egypt and to Jordan. In my mind, I was thinking, but I've been to Jordan and no miracles happened. So why they take me again to Jordan? And one thing in my mind, since Richard Zuli meeting, I want to confess. I want to say everything, but I didn't know how to do it. Honestly, that was only my problem. They took me around 5:30 p.m. And about 1:30 in the morning next day, because I saw the watch of the medic as he started to treat me. So he came, they put me in a cell, and the medic, was masked, and he say, when you I can do this and that, I'm going to break your teeth. So he was part of the torture team. So much for do no harm. And so he treated me actually. So he put like some band-aid around my ribs, a lot of it, and he gave me a lot of medication. I don't know what it was. And then this was August 24th or 25th. I don't remember. But the
so
second
how long had you been there by then?
No, this is a new prison. So this is a new prison. The night I came, this is a new prison. So I stayed there almost until 1 year before my release or 2 years before my release. So I never, so what I remember vividly are two things. So this is August, and the second thing I remember October 10th, because I saw a watch. Again, the interrogator was sitting and he looked briefly at his watch, and then I saw the date. But just before that, I cannot describe to you how much pain I was in, because there are no words. I'm alone. I don't know where. I don't know days or nights. They start this diet manipulation. They withhold foods for I don't know how many days until I almost die. And they give me a lot of amari meal ready to eat. Very bad food, at least to me. But I cannot eat it because when I'm depressed, I cannot eat. Then they give to me, and then they give me 1 minute, but they don't respect the minute. I think they give 20 seconds, and they take everything back. But I'm happy. Because I don't want to see them. I just want to pass and die without pain, something like that. And so I start in myself to sing Quran when they're not there, to sing to just to feel good, pray and so. And they came to me with force. He said, if I pray again, they will beat me. And then they force feed me. When Ramadan came, they come during the force feed me. I didn't know it was. I know somehow it's Ramadan, and actually I know somewhere during day. I know somewhere during day. Why? When I go to the bathroom, I look inside the bathroom, and I could see the light of the day through the plumbing. So in the time when they force feed me very little, just to make sure I'm not respecting Ramadan. So that's only, I'm just trying to put you in the picture that to understand how destroyed my spirit was. Then I did this prayer and I asked Allah for guidance, i.e. God, because I didn't know what to do. And in my mind, nothing I would tell them would stop this. I called one of the guard, I don't know their names, they're masked too. And I said, I need to see Captain Collins. Richard Zuli called himself Captain Collins. That's what he called himself. And he came to me and I told him, I want to confess. He said, okay, I will send you the people. And he sent me First Sergeant Shell. And Peterson Shirley start asking me. And then I was just like, ooh, no stop. Ask me, do you know like Jordan Peterson? Yes, he's a terrorist. I know him. I saw him. He was preparing, Everybody I know is a bad guy. And so, and then, because interrogation is a technique, they don't ask you the hard question in the beginning. They always start softly. Where did you study? What school did you go to? To prep you up. And then they said, everything you said is good. We appreciate your cooperation, everything. But you need to tell us something that would put you in prison, because everything you said, America, he told me, is very liberal country. And they need hard evidence. And then he said, you were in Canada, you may have wanted to attack the CN Tower. The only problem, I didn't know what CN Tower was, nor did I know where. And then he said, like in Toronto. So, and then I said yes. And it made sense to everything. So I said, okay. And he confronted me with a phone conversation I had in Canada. I think it was on 22nd, Street 22nd. I was living with my friend Mohsen because I didn't have an apartment.
This was in Montreal?
Correct. I love Montreal, by the way. It's beautiful. The streets. I never saw in my life a street that is 4,500 house. That's, Europe, like the longest street in Germany is 150 or 200. That's it. But I remember Jean Talon, 4,532. What kind of street is that? Like, when I say, oh, I live in Jean Talon, and my friend lives in Jean Talon. Oh, you guys close? No, we are not close. So it was 22nd, and we were living. And then, we like tea in Mauritania, at least this culture. We appreciate tea. And it was, I think, 9 p.m. And it was really cold. This is December, late December. And it was really cold, and I really liked tea. And this guy, our neighbor, he wants to come over and drink tea. And I said, could you please, swing by the dépanneur? This is dépanneur. It's
corner
Montreal.
store.
Yes, yeah. Could you please swing by and get us some sugar? Tea? Yeah, sugar, I think. I didn't have sugar. And then they kept asking me. They intercept this conversation. What do you mean when you say tea and sugar? And I would say, I meant tea and sugar. Wrong answer. So in this confession, I told them that tea and sugar are explosive. So, so we just give them these nicknames. That's where I built the bomb. And they said, okay, why did you meet this guy? I said, this guy helped me. So everybody had a role. So now everything made sense to them, because all the guys around were bad people. And now they had a job. So they gave money. We brought this from Chechen smugglers. And I put everything in the confession. And they asked me to sign the confession. And I did sign the confession. And so what was happening behind the scene was I was being designated for death penalty. So, and the guy who took the case was Colonel Couch, U.S. Marines. He was like a very decent person, I mean, he told them, this doesn't make sense to me. He said he denied everything. And from one day to the next, he said, no more denial. What's going on? And then they wouldn't tell him anything. And then he made investigation on his own, and he found out I was heavily tortured. And then he resigned. And later on, they gave the case to Colonel Maurice Davis. They call him Mo Davis, Air Force Colonel. I know him. We are friends now. And so they said, okay, we need to put this guy on lie detector. So because the team who was interrogating him, they said they have the gold nugget, a confession from a very bad guy. And the analyst said, BS, he didn't do this. This is BS. Whatever you did to him, we don't know, but this is what he said is BS. So they came to me and they put me on this lie detector. I said, guys, I'm an engineer. I cannot go through this because I will tell the truth. And then they said, it doesn't matter, you have to. And then I was so scared because now with the confession, I had the status of admitted criminal, you know, and I had the right to eat, I had the right to pray, I had the right to, you know, sleep for the first time. I didn't care what they did to me after that, you know. And then now I was so scared to go back to torture when I deny everything. But they told me this was coming from very high level people in the government that I need. Then I remember one of the questions, did you ever plot or conspire to plot against the US? And I said, and Canada. And the guy told me, said, I don't give a shit about Canada. I was like, good for you. I was in my head because I couldn't say that, you know, and, you know, this is like very like Americans. I'm sure you understand because you're North American. You know, this is, you know, very Americans because and I was so happy because I was so upset with Canada, so upset. Like if you tell me, are you more upset at the US or Canada? I would say Canada because I was a landed immigrant in Canada and they scared me so much. Instead of protecting me, they threw me under the bus, you know, they completely swallowed everything that came from the CIA, FBI, or whatnot, and without doing their own investigation and say, you know what, this is a guy in our territory, and this is a guy, we owe him the protection, and we need to know if he's a bad guy. We don't protect bad guys, but we need to understand he's a bad guy. We need to find out. And so when he said that, it was like the only thing we agree on. Thank you. So, and then I passed the test from like a death penalty case to someone who didn't do anything. You know,
I was because, like, sorry, let me get that clear. So you did the lie detector test, and what did it reveal? It revealed that your confession was false? Everything
I said that was incriminating was false. Have you ever conspired? Yeah, have you ever conspired? Did you ever talk to anyone about harming the US? Never. Nothing.
Okay, so during the lie detector test, you told the truth about everything. Yes. I see. And so that nullified your confession.
Yes, I denied everything and truthfully. So they took the test and they fought over it. And they said one of them insisted to come next day or next week and to do again the test. They did the test again, and again I passed the test. So all of those tests are now in my hands on my computer because my lawyer gave them to me and they were presented at the court, at my court. So so I was there. So the torture effectively stopped. The end of 2000, early 2004, there was no more torture.
So so you were in the torture prison for 2 years, if I got that timeline right?
No.
Okay.
The intensive torture was between June of 2003 and early 2004. A little bit over half a year.
Okay, and tell me again when you were brought to Guantanamo Bay. Tell me when you arrived there.
I arrived August 5th of 2003.
Okay. Two.
Not 3, yes. And yes. So, and so, but what happened that they just didn't know what to do with me. So, and I was just there, and they wouldn't release me and they wouldn't take me to trial. They wouldn't release me because they thought I witnessed so much, I saw so much, and they didn't want me to reveal it. At least that's my understanding and that of my lawyers. And second, they couldn't take me to any trial because there was no crime to be tried. That was the conclusion of Mo Davis. And he wrote this in a memorandum. He said, there is no evidence this guy did anything against us. And on record, he said that. And so you have to forward. So then I started making friendship with guards and with interrogators. I just started to be, inmate. I start like, the guards start to be my friends, and they introduce me to American pop culture, music. When they bring books, I borrow from them the books and
So
I read them.
did they realize at that point, did they treat you as if you were innocent? Apart, obviously, they didn't release you, but your treatment radically improved. So did they believe you, your guards and so on?
That's very hard to, because we didn't speak about my innocence or my guilt. Because it was like a taboo topic almost. I didn't feel comfortable to talk about it because it's so cliche for a detained person to say I'm innocent. So I don't want to be a cliche. Absolutely not. I just want whatever. I'm just.
Well, you also must have been quite relieved, I would suspect, since your days had improved substantially.
Oh, you have no clue how relieved I was. But I was a mess, because I start hearing voices, and I start really to get very sick. And then they put me on 2 medications, Paxil and the other, Clonopin. And then, so like most of this time I was isolation, and then I begged them to take me out of the isolation, but they refused. Then after, I think 2 or 3 years, I didn't want to see people anymore. And to this day, Jordan, I don't feel comfortable around people. I always feel comfortable when I'm alone, because.
How much time did you spend alone over those years?
Okay, 2003, 2016. About 10 years.
Mostly alone. How often would you see people?
Just guards.
Just
the guards and the staff. I see only the guards and the staff.
And what sort of cell were you in? What was it like?
It was like, I think 6 by 8. No, I don't think it's 6 because I think it's 4 by 6. I don't want to pin myself, but maybe 4 by 6 feet, 4 by 8 feet, 4 by 8.
When was there a bed in it, in the cell?
Yes, it was like a metal, a metal sheet, that's made into a bed. You can look it up. You can look Guantanamo Bay prison, and then you will see the cell.
So you're alone for almost 10 years in that cell?
Correct.
And so how did it come to be that you got legal representation and were able to start to free yourself?
Some UK citizen went to court because they were with us and they had good lawyers. Then they made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and then they won the right to be to challenge their detention. And I was not aware of this because I had no right even to contact anyone. But the family of that's the advantage of a free country. So UK is a free country, so their families, they fought very much for everyone. And so I had all of a sudden, I benefited from these UK citizens because the right was given to everyone. And in 2005, mid-2005, I met my lawyers for the first time. I met Nancy Hollander and Sylvia Royce. They came to me, and then I saw them as a window, and I started to write my story, my memoir.
So what did you think when the lawyer showed up?
I was so happy, you know. And I remember the first time they came to me, I sat on a chair like this with a desk in front of me. You know, it was like one of the standard interrogation room. And then I stood up, and then I started to say hi, but I wouldn't move because I was bolted. But they couldn't see the chain. And they were like sitting there because they were briefed that detainees are dangerous people. So they were scared. And then I was very happy, honestly. You know.
And how long did it take your lawyers to understand your story and, I presume, believe you?
Yes, very long, because the accused is innocent until proven guilty. Only your mother believed this. So people at large, and I'm sure you understand this, people perceive the accused as
well,
guilty.
It would be very hard for someone to believe that you had spent that long in Guantanamo Bay and weren't guilty of something. I mean, because they would have to question the validity of the entire system, and that's not an easy thing to do. And that's probably even a harder thing to do if you are from a country where rule of law is the norm.
Correct. Yes. Absolutely, you know. And I mean, I can't say more than what you said. And I was like, okay, how can I explain to them? And then they were very shocked when they compelled the government to show them. The government showed them the confession. He confessed. And then they were very upset with him. They said, why are you lying to us? And so, and I was like, oh my, the government only showed them I confessed. They didn't show them I was tortured. So.
Did they show them the lie detector results?
Much later on, because the government hold all the cards, and then they show only the thing they want to show, you know. And, you know, like the democracy and the rule of law is premised that the three branches of the government cooperate with each other. So, and the executive power has so much power over judiciary and the parliament because only the executive power has weapons, has violence, could use violence, because a judge can only tell you you're right, you can go home, but the judge doesn't have the key to open the cell and let you go home. So the executive power has to cooperate and respect the judiciary. By and large, this function in democracies, but in the case of Guantanamo Bay, the executive power completely showed a great deal of contempt toward court system.
So how did your lawyers free you? How did that happen?
Look, this is not easy because they had to prove that I was innocent. That was like mission impossible because they have to show the government I'm innocent. It's not the burden, it's not on the government because this is, and I say this very frankly and very straight, the problem with the crime they call terrorism is that it's very political, very politicized, and especially in my part of the world, I can speak to that. It's used to oppress mostly peaceful political dissent, and to crush them, and to people who don't like, just to put them in a prison because they could be your political rivals. Unfortunately, this playbook of the dictatorial regime in the Middle East and authoritarian regimes was copied in Guantanamo Bay, and they just say you're terrorist, because when someone says you're terrorist, everything could be done against you. And there is no definition, and I have big problem with that. I don't think that philosophically in a democracy, terrorism should be a crime. Terrorism in a democracy cannot be a crime because one, it's not clearly defined. Terrorists in Canada are not terrorists in Egypt. Terrorists in Egypt are not terrorists in Saudi Arabia. Terrorists in Saudi Arabia are not terrorists in Palestine and Israel, etc., etc. But a murderer is a murderer because same thing in Canada, in the US, in Mauritania. If you kill someone, that's a crime, and it can be proven very easily. But you could be a terrorist in Egypt, and as soon as you get to Canada, you're a good citizen. And second, it's used for political purposes and political oppression, and it's used to I need to bail out. So, and it's used to punish people en masse. I can give you an example. Just a few months ago, the Houthi in Yemen were a terrorist group. And then now they are not terrorist group anymore. What kind of justice is that?
So how did your lawyers prove that to the satisfaction of the people who could release you that you should be released?
They took me to so we fought to go to the court system. So I was intimidated, I was threatened, but I said I'm going to court. In 2009, we succeeded to be heard by the late George Robertson. Judge Robertson, and he ordered my release in 2010. So he heard us in late 2009, ordered my release in 2010. He said there is no evidence to hold this guy, and the government refused. And then they appealed. The appeal hung, and so my book was published after a very big fight. And then after the publication of my book, the government said they want to review my case. They reviewed my case. They said, I'm no threat to the US. In 2016, July of 2016. And in October of 2016, they said, I can go home. End of story.
Now, a movie was made out of that book as well.
A movie, The Mauritanian. Please go and watch the movie and make up your own mind. And it's pretty accurate. And there is no hero in the movie, just like a bunch of people. And it shows like just, the weakness of human beings.
And your attitude towards all of this now?
Total forgiveness, because I believe in reconciliation. I believe that our life is too short to hold grudges and to wage wars, because we need each other. My country needs the United States, and the United States could need my country. And we need to be brothers and sisters, and we need to cooperate and make our world a better place. And I'm starting by honestly and earnestly say that I hold no grudge against anyone, and I'm ready to cooperate with anyone, regardless of their religion, their background, their ideology, political ideology.
And why did you come to that decision?
because of the diaper story I told you, when the CIA put me in diapers, and I faced death.
Okay.
I want to be a better person.
And you hung on to that through the time that you were in Guantanamo Bay?
Absolutely. I couldn't honestly express it because people could say, he's just scared. But now I'm a free man. I could say it, and I'm inviting everyone I met in Guantanamo Bay to come to me. Some people came to me, and with the drunk tea, they stayed at my home. One of the guards, Steve Wood, he came to me 3 times, and I hosted him in my humble home.
And why did he come to see you, do you think?
We became friends. We became good friends. You know, he's the godfather of my child. I'm the godfather of his daughter. And we just want to be friends and to show everyone that, you know, peace can be made. We don't need to hold grudges.
Is there anything else you want to say?
I would like to say I'm so honored to be on your show, and I thank you so much to give me your platform and allow me to share my story with your audience.
Well, thank you for walking through it. I'm sure that's far from pleasant to do that. And
you have no clue.
Yes. Thank God for that.